Welcome to the
New York City.
Pinstripe Territory.
Just when they thought I was out, they pull me back in.
All right. Labor Day edition of Pinstripe Territory. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back to Max Goodman making his debut on Pinstripe Territory. Been on NYY Recaps a bunch of times. Max, happy Labor Day. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to see you. How are things with the new look for you so far?
It was a lot of work, but it seems to be going well. I love having the fresh look, which I'd been looking for a reason to give it kind of a fresh coat of paint for a while, and so I feel pretty good about it. And obviously, working with Scott and AJ and Kratz and all that stuff is fun. So let's get right to it, because there's a lot of people that were kind of surprised, caught off guard yesterday, that Jason Dominguez was not part of the September call-ups. Last year on September 1st, he made his debut, hit a home run off of Verlander, set the city on fire for about a week, and then he went down with an injury and broke all of our hearts. Now he's ready, he's healthy, he's mashing in the minor leagues, and Alex Verdugo's hitting .232, I believe. It's clear to me that what I saw from Dominguez is more promising than what we see from Verdugo, though we did have a couple of hits yesterday. What was your reaction and sort of the general reaction among the writers? It seemed like a few people were kind of surprised that the Yankees are sticking with Verdugo there.
Well, that was something that I'm sure I'm not alone, but I had a story already written and ready to go that he was one of the guys coming back up. Obviously, Rizzo, we knew that was going to happen, and I think that Efros and Marinaccio was my intuition as well in terms of the bullpen ads. But yeah, seeing Duke Ellis on there was definitely a surprise. It's definitely deeper than just it was going to be a guarantee with Dominguez, because the Yankees do really like Verdugo, as much as his numbers are pretty grotesque, quite frankly. I mean, it's been a disastrous walk year for him, or year going into free agency. His numbers over this entire summer, he's been one of the worst hitters in Major League Baseball, and that's not hyperbole or anything like that. Also in left field for the Yankees, he was supposed to be the solution to what's been years of issues, right? Before we went live, I was going back to 2020 until right now, and the Yankees are bottom 6, I think it was, in OPS at that position. So this is something that they're used to dealing with. And as much as Verdugo is a great defender out there, I know that one play in Baltimore is going to stick in your mind as to how he's played this entire season, but he has been elite. He makes a lot of great running catches, and his arm has been plus out there. So I think Yankees definitely trust him more than a Dominguez in terms of coming up and playing good defense. But offensively, the ceiling for Jason is obviously much higher. And my take on it too is, if you're going to have Dominguez play at any point this year leading into October, the earlier the better. You want to give him more time to get acclimated again with big league pitching, because now it's been over a year. And him coming up for one day in that Williamsport game to face Skubal was basically a wash. I mean, he was one of the guys on the 40. It made sense. Scranton's pretty close to there. So that's kind of a throwaway promotion when you think of the long-term picture here. And I would be very surprised if he doesn't come up at all this season. I wonder if it's the service time thing. They want to wait a little bit longer. But the bottom line is, once you bring Dominguez up, he's going to play every single day. And at that point, Verdugo doesn't really fit into the playing time picture. And I wonder if the Yankees will lose Verdugo in a sense, where he has that boisterous personality, and when he's going well, he's going to flip his bat and everything. But we've seen him really wearing those struggles. And if he effectively gets benched for someone that's that much younger than him, and he doesn't have a chance to maybe turn his walk year around, like with what we've seen Gleyber do recently, I don't know how he's going to react to something like that.
Attitude could be an issue there. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be benched right before I become a free agent and you got a chance. I mean, with a hot postseason, I guess he's thinking along those lines. Maybe I can get a contract or whatever. But, Dominguez, he's a switch hitter, so he's got that over Verdugo. Like, he's not completely neutralized by lefties. Honestly, Verdugo's a good outfielder. I think Dominguez will be. I know he had a tough day in that, the Little League game or whatever. I think he's going to be fine out there. I've seen him make a number of really good plays in the outfield. So I was a little surprised. I was a little shocked. I do think it's better for him to keep getting regular at bats, right? You don't want him to come up and sit the bench. So this is better than the alternative. I think the worst situation would be to do what they did with guys like Peraza, where you call him up and sit him on the bench. That's the worst. So at least he's getting more at bats, and you hope that when he comes up, he gets a chance. But I'm just not sure that the Yankees are going to have the cojones to sit Alex Verdugo this late into his contract year. But we do have some other young youth that's been promising that I want to talk about. So, Rookie of the Year, Yankees are no stranger to this. Judge was the Rookie of the Year. They had the number 2 spot a couple of times. I believe Gary Sanchez was number 2. I believe Miguel Andujar was number 2. And obviously Jeter won. So, we got a shot. Colton Cowser has been kind of the favorite all year long, but Austin Wells recently overtook him in WAR for the whole season. And he doesn't play as much because he's a catcher. And then you've got Luis Gil, who's had a really, really solid year. The back injury and sort of the dip recently might kind of hurt him in his potential votes. But I think both these guys, I wouldn't be shocked if either one of them edged out and won Rookie of the Year. What are your thoughts?
Well, I got to dig into the numbers a little bit more before I definitively say, I think it's going to be Wells, for instance. I know that Wilyer Abreu with the Red Sox is also having a pretty solid year.
Yeah.
And some of his numbers offensively are better than Wells and Cowser, I think. But he's played even more games, I believe, or at least more than Wells. But, recency bias would suggest that Wells is climbing up that leaderboard pretty fast. I mean, the fact that he's really solidified himself as a threat in the middle of the Yankees lineup, hitting right behind Judge, I don't think he's had as much success when teams have pitched around Judge in big spots, but just the overall eye test is that he's been doing just a tremendous job. I'm pretty, pleased with what I've seen from him in terms of his defense too, and that's a little bit under the radar. I know his arm isn't as strong as maybe you'd like, and that's something that he can improve as he goes forward, but the framing numbers are tremendous. I think he hasn't been as much of an issue back there when you bring Gary Sanchez up. Like it isn't as detrimental to him as you thought it was when he was coming up as a prospect. And the offense has been spectacular, right? I mean, he's playing pretty much every day right now too, and really shoring up a spot that was such a black hole for this team for a while. So, I out of the two of them, I guess maybe Wells would have a better case, but Gil has been great too, right? I mean, there were some stretches where he was not just the best rookie, but one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. That's a pretty long time ago now. And we got to see how he finishes off the season and how he fits with the rotation and limiting the command issues, because the walks, I think he's right up there in terms of leading the league in walks. So that's certainly a black eye on his case. But, in the AL, I think he's been probably the best rookie pitcher, right? I mean, there are a few that are much better than him metrically and surface level number wise in terms of the National League with Imanaga and Skeens and so on. But the Yankees have two cases there, and depending on when they bring Dominguez up, he could make a case for next year too.
Yeah, I always felt like with the Rookie of the Year, there's a little bit of recency bias. So guys who finish stronger seem to get like more votes or at least more consideration in all the MLB Network talk and all that stuff that happens leading up to the award announcements. But, you can't throw out what Luis Gil did the first part of this year. I believe he was 10-1 with an ERA around 2 at one point. And that was during a time when the Yankees didn't have Garrett Cole. And if it weren't for that, they're probably 5 games out in the division if he didn't, if he pitched like an average pitcher. He was exemplary. And I think that I think he deserves top 3 for sure. Wells and Cowser is going to be interesting. It works the other way for Wells, right? Recency bias. He's gotten better as the season's gone along. He didn't get off to a good start, but he's finishing strong, and he might have a big September the way he's swinging the bat. His swing, to me, I don't know how much, how far into the past you've watched Yankee baseball, but he has got that classic lefty swing that we've seen from so many guys, right? I mean, you can just see him. He's almost got a Giambi kind of swing path. Do you see that at all?
I do. Yeah, it's really tailor-made. I mean, I know we throw that phrase tailor-made for Yankee Stadium out there with every lefty that has pop basically with, Jazz Chisholm kind of fits in that same category too with the way he's
Yeah.
fit at Yankee Stadium so far. But absolutely. And I think that goes all the way back to the scouting department, right? I mean, they drafted him to wreak havoc in the lefty batter's box in the Bronx. And
Yep.
I think it's validation for the Yankees so far. And you ask anybody in that clubhouse and they will speak so highly of Wells, and he's got some dance moves too. So
I actually haven't watched the TikToks that
oh my gosh.
I know. I just hate TikTok so much. I just don't. But I got people for that. They can tell me about it. But all right, let's talk about the bullpen a little bit because they had an awful day yesterday. And if there's one thing that typically drives a championship team, it's a strong bullpen. You go back to the Yankees dynasty, obviously Rivera holding things down, but they also had some really good setup men, Jeff Nelson, Mike Stanton, all those years. And then you go back to the 2009 run, all the great, big outs that were picked up by Damaso Marte and Phil Hughes along the way. And I just don't know if this pen has what it takes to cut through October. That's to me, with all the talk about the offense and all the talk about, runners in scoring position and yada, 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 and the rotation, to me, it's the bullpen that's the biggest red flag. What are your thoughts on the Yankee bullpen? Who we got coming back? What's the timeline for these guys? And do you see any kind of rearrangement here as we move into October?
Well, first off, I totally agree with you. I think that if anything could really hold this team back in October, I think it's the bullpen. And it's hard to really trust, if I'm a fan in the stands and I see anyone other than Luke Weaver, Jake Cousins has been great, and Tommy Kahnle, other than yesterday, he's really solid since the All-Star break. And quite frankly, Clay Holmes has under the radar really settled into a groove here, and he's much better, I've found, in his splits in the beginning of the season and the very end of the season. Over the summer is when he's had struggles. So, let's see if he can, be an anchor in the back going into October. But other than those four, really, the Yankees don't have that many trustworthy guys back there. Maybe Tim Hill, but he's not necessarily a leverage arm. I think they would pick a lane specifically for him with a lot of lefties. He's going to pitch to contact. He's certainly not a strikeout guy. So I'll go back to the trade deadline, right? I mean, Mark Leiter Jr. has not pitched well so far, and Enyel De Los Santos was a dud as well. So they had an opportunity to add a little bit more. Both of those two trades were that second tier, man. I think right before the deadline, we were talking about how it didn't seem like they were going to go out and get that Tanner Scott, the top guy on the market. They were going to shoot a little bit lower than that. And both of those deals just haven't exactly worked out so far. I do think Leiter could pitch a little bit better down the stretch. And that's someone that, if you look at some of the metrics, he was really good early on with the Cubs, and his ERA was a little higher than it should have been. And so far, he's just been getting burned with a lot of slug. So if he's able to just get into better counts with his splitter, which is one of the best swing and miss pitches in all of baseball, then maybe he can start to be a seventh inning guy or something like that. But he's got to prove that to a lot of us, obviously. So when it comes to who's coming back, I mean, Scott Effross was a name that fans have been clamoring for. And gosh, his first outing was a disaster. Yeah.
He stunk. He stunk. Oh.
Batted balls over 100 miles an hour. And, it's nice for him because that was almost 2 years since his last outing, coming back from Tommy John, coming back from back surgery. So I do think he might fit if he's able to figure things out just because of the deceptive look that he has. And nobody else in the Yankees bullpen throws from that slot from the right side. It's a little more similar to Tim Hill. So at his best, he can certainly help them. And he's better against lefties, I think, in his career. So that helps considering they only have one other lefty because Tim Mays is not going to stick around.
No.
I think Phil Bickford's going to get designated for assignment any day now. And Ian Hamilton, before his injury, wasn't great. He regressed quite a bit from what he did last year. So he's a little bit of a question mark for me. I don't think you can really count on Lou Trevino either because of how far he's come back since the Tommy John surgery. Yeah. And, when you and I were messaging, you brought up Birdie. Nick Birdie is a name that hasn't been mentioned at all for quite an extended stretch in terms of, when we get injury updates and that kind of thing. So he's just available in AAA, but I'm not sure if they would bring him up either. So there will be some turnover down the stretch, but other than those four guys that I led with, Leiter's got to pitch better. Effross has to figure things out. I don't know if they would roll with a Ron Marinaccio. He's had a pretty good year, but really hasn't stuck at either level. He's just been going back and forth a lot. They've been using his options. And then last thing, we're going to get into the rotation, but there's got to be, maybe a Nestor in there or a long man. I think Luis Gil would be great in high leverage, but not with his command, right? I mean, you can't.
The walks are the issue there. Yeah.
He's going to walk guys in a big spot, and then you're going to lose a game that way. So, they could have brought in some more guys that get strikeouts that you can count on, but the price for relievers this year was exorbitant. It was really high. So, you can't blame them for that, but also it's a win now team. Maybe they'll end up regretting it.
I was kind of hoping they would pick up Kopech. He's been great with the Dodgers. He's done a really nice job. Obviously Tanner Scott got moved. The price for him would have been like Spencer Jones and Roderick Arias plus, if you look at like comparable prospects, maybe even a Dominguez. So I don't think I would have pulled the trigger on that. So I don't blame Cashman. But, maybe you're right. Maybe the way to kind of fix this thing is to put somebody from the rotation in that middle relief spot to kind of take some pressure off these guys. We'll talk about the playoff rotation in just a second. But first, we've got to have an ad, a word from our friends over at Foul Territory, and then we'll be back with Max.
Congestion from sinuses, allergies, or a cold can be all-consuming.
That includes snoring for me. But Scotty, I found some relief from Navage Nasal Care. You've got to try this. Navage makes breathing easier. My Navage unit is a game changer for clearing my congestion fast.
Yeah, Kratz, Navage uses that smooth saline flow and nasal suction to clear those nasal passages.
It works for me, Scotty. I've noticed a huge difference since I started using Navage. I'm breathing better and the whole family is pumped that I've got the snoring under control.
We want to help you get relief from your congestion too. Our listeners can order a convenient Navage starter pack, including a nose cleaner with batteries included and 30 original salt pods. Everything you need to get started. Plus, get a cleaning kit as a free gift with your order, but only going to our exclusive URL, navage.com/foul, and using our promo code FOUL. Again, to order your Navage free cleaning kit and for full product details, go to navage.com/foul. That's promo code FOUL at navage.com/foul.
I just realized I'm muted. I muted myself during the ad, but okay. Let's get to the playoff rotation here. Obviously, during the playoffs, you only need 4 starting pitchers, right? You don't need that 5th guy. So it's either going to be Stroman or Nestor, maybe even Rodon, though probably not Rodon, that goes to the pen or gets left off the roster completely. So as you think about it right now, let's just assume Clark Schmidt comes back on schedule in the next, let's say 10 days or so, and he gets a couple of starts and he's good. Is he in your rotation? Does he go to the pen? He could be an excellent relief pitcher. How you lining up your rotation? I'm sure it depends a little bit on who you play. So I'll just hypothetically say, the wild card right now is Orioles and I believe the Royals, right? So let's just say the Orioles win. Let's say we're playing the Orioles in the ALDS. Who's your 4-man rotation? Who goes to the pen?
Ooh, it's tough. I was trying to prep a little bit for this. I think it would be Cole, Rodon, Gil, Schmidt. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I think that Gil and honestly Schmidt as well would fit in a bullpen role, but maybe you just stick Nestor back there in like a long man bridge type of role where if your starter is only going to go 3 innings, you could have Nestor come in and he's just such a different pitcher than any of those 4, closer to Rodon, obviously. Rodon is the highest ERA of the bunch, I think, if you include Stroman too. But I don't think he's going anywhere with the money that he's making. And when he's at his best, he really is a 1B behind Garrett. And we've seen that a little bit this summer. He's got a couple weeks to get back to that level. Obviously, Garrett's not coming out of the rotation. And then what we're seeing on the IL with Gil and Schmidt is that those guys are being built up as starters, right? It would have been pretty telling if Gil only threw, 30, 40 pitches in a rehab outing when he had been throwing and it was going to be a short stint for him. Same with Schmidt. I mean, he's ramping up. We'll see how many pitches he throws today. I think he's making another rehab outing this evening. That situation, right? That's a situation where I was trying to map out the schedule, and that's why I asked Aaron Boone yesterday if Nestor's going to make his next start, because with the off day on Thursday, Heel threw on the same day as Nestor. So Heel could have been going on extra rest in that Chicago series on Friday, and then Schmidt would have gone on Saturday. And that's assuming that both of them are cleared and ready to go. It's a situation where Boone has continuously said, we'll see, we're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. So they obviously have some sort of plan and a preference, but they're not going to reveal that just yet because, who knows if something happens, if you hit a snag in your rehab. And same thing with the postseason rotation too, right? I mean, if they have 6 guys, it's a good problem to have that you have to whittle that down to 4, but they're not going to reveal those plans until you get much closer to then. So as frustrating as that is, I know, you out there watching, you want to find out who that's going to be. You could go either way with it. And you know how the Yankees like the righty lefty in their lineup. I think they could do the same thing and maybe put Nestor in there if he continues to pitch well. Obviously, yesterday was a step in the wrong direction, but before that, he had been dominant and, really hitting that swing and miss stuff, messing with timing. That's peak Nestor, what he had done the previous 3 outings. So I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, what would you, if you had to pick 4?
I would go Cole, obviously, number 1. I'd go Schmidt, number 2, because to me, he's the most reliable to give you 5 good innings, right? I don't think he's going to give you 7 and 1 earned run most of the time, but he keeps you in the game almost every time for 5 innings, which is what you need in the playoffs. Look at what Brandon Pfaadt did last year with the Diamondbacks. Just giving you a quality start every time is huge. I go Rodon, number 3, which scares me because number 3 in a playoff series is huge. Remember David Cohn in 96 coming back from that shoulder surgery, and then I think one of the series you had Kenny Rogers in the number 3 spot. It was like, oh, God. But I would go Stroman, number 4, because I think Stroman, his stuff when he's on, he's a ground ball machine. I don't want to get beat by the home run in the playoffs. And then Heel and Nestor, I think, could both move to the pen. Nestor becomes a reliable lefty that can get you an inning or 2. And Heel could be a high leverage, but not closer level. Like maybe 7th inning, you got a 2-run lead. I feel like he's not going to give up a lot of home runs. And if you just tell him, go in there and strike guys out, right? Go in there and blow guys away. Don't worry about pitching. Don't worry about nibbling. Just go in there and high-octane stuff. I think that his fastball is good enough that even if he gives up contact, he's not going to give up a lot of hard contact, right? He's not going to give up home runs. He might give up a couple of hits or he might walk somebody. But I feel like you could put him in the 7th inning and he would be effective enough, right? He might have one game where he implodes or whatever, but I would put my chips on him in the bullpen. So that's where Cole, Schmidt, Rodon, Stroman would be my 4.
Then again, though, I mean, when Heel has been at his best, he's able to go 6-7 innings and strike out 12. And you're not going to really get that from anybody else other than a Cole. So in a sense, you might want Heel as your second starter. And
I can see that. But then again, I mean, like you said, that was a long time ago, right? It was early on in the season since he was doing that consistently. Once he added the slider or changed the grip on the slider midsummer, he had a nice little hot streak. If he comes back and he's doing that, then yeah, I think they'll probably stick with him, in the rotation. But it's just going to be an interesting call this year, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do and the rotation.
Also, Stroman, I don't really know. You had him as your 4. In my situation, I think he doesn't even make the roster.
Really?
Because I don't know how he would come out of the pen. He's not a reliever necessarily with his stuff that he has. I mean, unless it's totally a punt game where your starter gets rocked the first couple innings and you want him to just eat the entire middle innings and just pitch to contact. Because when he's not at his best, I mean, even when he's pitching well, he's grinding through, and
right.
The leash is going to be so much shorter in those postseason starts. I wonder if they needed to go out and get another starter, right? I mean, the same thing that we talked about with the bullpen. Their best 4 here, you're counting on Schmidt and Heel coming back from these injuries. And as much as Stroman, I think, has pitched to what maybe the fan expectation was, the back of his baseball card over the entire season as a whole, is he someone that you would really want to pitch in a game 6 or something like that?
So Stroman, the reason I would go with Stroman is there's 2 reasons. One, experience. He's been pitching a long time. So I feel like he's one of those guys that, if Heel doesn't have his stuff, he might walk the ballpark. He might allow 11 runs. I feel like in a playoff game, if Stroman doesn't have his best stuff, like you said, he'll grind and he'll figure out a way, even if it's like, I'm going to throw 15 straight curveballs or 15 straight sliders. Like, I feel like he would make that adjustment. He would be able to understand, I got one pitch working, or the ump's not giving me this. Like, from an intellectual standpoint, I think Stroman's a very smart pitcher. And I like that he keeps the ball on the ground. So I think I would just gamble that he'll give you a quality start. Like, I don't think he's going to give you 7 shutout innings, but if he can give you 6 and 3 runs, and then you hope you get, a little bit of offense that day. So that's my thought on Stroman. And Heel, like you said, coming back, I got to see it, right? I got to see him, like, coming back from this injury. I want to see him do it a couple of times before I feel comfortable running him out there, right? So, and we haven't seen him out of the bullpen either. So same goes for that. So it'll probably be Heel. I'm just, fantasy baseball. If I'm playing OOTP or MLB The Show, Heel in the 7th, Nestor for tough lefties, and that's the way I rock.
Sure.
Let's talk.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say let's talk about the AL East, because we got 25 games left. Orioles are winning right now, and we're gonna be tied with the Orioles in about 5 minutes. So, do you think the Yankees have what it takes to win this AL East title?
It's interesting because they've played so much better against good teams, the Yankees, that is, and they've played down to a lot of lesser competition. I mean, you just look at their schedule in August. It was a situation where they could have totally run away with things and really built a cushion, but they didn't sweep a single team. They played a rubber match in every single series, 9 series, and not capitalizing on those opportunities. And they lost series to Detroit, to Washington, to the Cardinals. Those are teams that you want to beat up on and move forward. You could look at this from either vantage point, right, with Baltimore or the Yankees. Both clubs have really not capitalized on a chance to run away with this thing. I think you can make a case that either of them should be 5-7 games up in the division. I mean, the Yankees have been playing 500 ball since June 1st. They're 39-39. And it gets even worse, that record, if you go to June 7th or whatever it is, because they won their first couple of games there. And then from that Dodgers series on, it started to get, really bad for them over the summer. So who do I think is going to win the division? Reverse psychology. I think the Yankees will play better, as much as their schedule down the road is much tougher than Baltimore. I haven't checked what the updated strength of schedule is for both of those teams, but I think Baltimore has a much easier road. So maybe the Yankees, as they continue to get healthy, you bring Rizzo back, you've got Hamilton on the way, both those starters that we were talking about. John Birdie is going to find his way back onto the roster too. They're kind of collecting those infinity stones and getting ready to roll down the stretch, but who knows, right? I mean, somebody important could get hurt in a week or two, and it totally changes the trajectory of how they're playing. So the bottom line is they've got to beat up on the bad teams that they're playing in September. You go to Oakland, you got to at least win that series, if not sweep. Yeah. But they're also playing some teams that are really hungry right now, that are fighting for their lives, like the Cubs. I think the Rangers are pretty much out of it at this point, right? But
they're 10 back in the West.
The Mariners are hanging on, and I'm blanking on a couple other teams that they play. But obviously that series against the Orioles at the very end of September might decide the division. Maybe not, literally, but I think it'll be very important leading into that final series against Pittsburgh. You want to be playing your best baseball here in that last month. I do think the Yankees can do it, but they've also got to get lucky with the Orioles still continuing to hit snags. I mean, their bullpen is even more of a liability than the Yankees, and their offense hasn't been as much firepower as I think we all thought it was going to be. So it might end up being, a toss-up at the very, very end, which is exciting, but obviously not what the Yankees or Baltimore would have wanted.
I tell you what, that final series in the Bronx between the Yankees and the Orioles is going to be a hot ticket. And you're probably going to be covering it, right? You're going to be there in the ballpark?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we'll see where Judge is at. He's cooled down quite a bit over this last week in terms of the home run pace. I was kind of thinking he might be, over 60 at that point going into the homestand there. But either way, I mean, I think as much as fans hate it when Aaron Boone says it, that the Yankees kind of hold the pen, right? They are in a position here with 1 month left. If they play good baseball, they'll win the division. right?
It's all right there in front of us.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we're
Alright.
doing a couple more of those.
I'll tell you what. I'm going to go ahead and give my Nostra Derek prediction right now. Yanks are going to win the AL East. They're going to reclaim, and I'm saying that I'm a little biased, I'll admit, but I just feel like it's coming. I feel like they're making it interesting. They're stressing us out, but ultimately they will get it done. Max Goodman, appreciate it. We'll have you back on here as we approach the postseason, and obviously in October. Hopefully it's a long October, and we've got multiple series to preview and recap. And we'll see you then. Thanks, Max.
Sounds good. Have a good one. Good to see you.
Appreciate it, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and give us a subscribe. It helps other Yankees fans find the channel. We're also on all your favorite podcast platforms and social media. Join the community, have some fun. We're here after every game. This is Pinstripe Territory.